Family Under the Bridge, Chapter 9. Madame Calsey was the most surprised of all when she heard that Armand planned to take a regular job. "I can't let you do that," she said. "It would not be fair." For a few seconds Armand was ready to agree with her. Oh la la, to settle down to work after all these lazy years! But there were the children with their pleading eyes. "It would be the fairest thing in Paris," persisted Armand, half arguing with himself. "We put our money together to pay rent, and with what is left over, we eat. You cook my meals and give me a corner to live in. Susie can draw a square on the floor." "But you shouldn't have to help us," said Madame Calsey. "We aren't even related to you." The children disagreed. "He's our grandpa," cried Susie. "He's the only grandpa we have," said Paul. "Grandpa, grandpa," sang Evelyn. "Do I have to beg for grandchildren?" Armand asked Madame Calsey. "To tell you the truth, I'm beginning to be ashamed of begging. It takes away a man's self-respect." Madame Calsey had to give in. There were too many against her. Once she had agreed, she became very practical. "If you are going to look for work," she said, "you must look respectable. One who seeks a job tries to look his best." "How do I do that?" asked Armand. "First, you take a bath," she told him. "A bath!" exclaimed Armand in alarm. "At this time of the year?" "It will be warm enough in the tent because it is near the bakery wall," she said. "I will heat water in a pot over the fire. Then you can take a bird bath in there." "I'll die of pneumonia," he declared. "You will be a new man," she promised. Even while he made excuse after excuse, she built up the fire and brought water from the street hydrant. "There now," she said when the water was boiling. "It is time for you to use that pink soap. I did not give it to you to eat." So Armand carried the water into the tent, fussing and fuming all the while. "Come, Jojo," he called the dog. "You can chase the soap when it slips out of my hands." "And throw your clothes out," called Madame Calsey after him. "Susie and I will sponge the spots, and I will mend the holes and tears." She went to work on Armand's old clothes. She hung them on the fence and beat them. She and Susie sponged the stains and spots as best they could. Evelyn made herself busy brushing his worn beret. "And he can wear that other pair of shoes in his buggy," said Paul. "The gypsies and I mended the soles with copper to surprise him." They could hear moans and groans coming from the tent. Then they heard Jojo howling. "Oh, I hope they didn't spill hot water over themselves," said Susie. "Perhaps Jojo ate the pretty soap," said Evelyn. To their astonishment, a strange beast came bounding from the tent to them. It was a dripping wet beast, but a very white one. It was Jojo, looking as if he had fallen into a bucket of whitewash. Susie grabbed him before he could roll in the sand. "He's white, Mama!" she cried in amazement. "He's really a white dog!" She took a clean rag and pulled him over to the fire. She rubbed and rubbed him dry. His long fur fluffed out like duckling fuzz. Evelyn kept asking, "Where's Jojo? Where is our Jojo?" Paul brought Armand's clothes and shoes to him. When the man came out of the tent, he looked as changed as Jojo. Like the dog's fur, his whiskers were soft and fluffy, and he had a damp look. Susie was enchanted with his bearded chin. "I'll trim it for you," she offered. Obediently, Armand sat on a slab of concrete, and Susie went to work with her mother's scissors. She snipped and snipped. "I made a mistake in the middle," she said, "so I'll have to make 2 points." She frowned and snipped some more. From one side to the other, she moved, snipping with the scissors. At last, she was satisfied. "You look so distinguished," said Madame Calsey in admiration. "Just like an artist," added Susie admiringly. "Why do you have to dress up to get a job as a pusher at the halls?" asked Paul. "They didn't look like that." "Ta-ta!" exclaimed Armand. "You don't think I'm going to apply for a low job like that, do you?" "Are you going to be a policeman?" asked Evelyn. "No, indeed," replied Armand. "Don't you remember my friend Father Christmas said somebody was looking for a night watchman? That's the job for me. Rest all day and take a couple walks around some building during the night. And once I get Jojo trained, I won't even have to do that." "But no one will be able to see you at night," said Susie in disappointment. "They won't be able to see your stylish whiskers." Armand laughed at this as he walked toward the opening. Then he called to Jojo. "Come, boy," he called. "Part of this job will belong to you, too." He walked slowly in the direction of the Louvre store. His copper soles clinked against cobbles and asphalt. He didn't want to hurry to a job. Goodness, no. He might change his mind at the last minute. "Now, what was the name of the man who was looking for a watchman?" he asked Jojo. Camille won't be there any more. Monsieur! I have caught it. Latour! Monsieur Latour!" His steps clinked faster, and the fluffy white dog pranced at his heels. The Rue de Rivoli was busy as a beehive again. Hadn't those people bought all they needed? But the Christmas decorations were gone. Now the vendors were screaming about the new year. Armand helped Jojo through the glass doors of which the store was so proud. He walked to a saleslady. "Is there a Monsieur Latour here?" he asked. "He's on the mezzanine now," she answered. "Oh, no. Here he comes. Monsieur Latour! Monsieur Latour!" Armand turned to face the haughty floor walker. His first idea was to grab Jojo in his arms and run through the glass doors again. But the haughty Monsieur did not recognize them. Somehow the new Armand found his voice. "Camille, who worked here Christmas, told me that you were looking for a night watchman, Monsieur," he said. Monsieur Latour tapped his forehead, trying to remember something. He kept looking at Armand in a puzzled way. "Oh, yes, a friend wants someone dependable to look after his building," he answered. "But haven't I met you somewhere before? Your face looks familiar." "Perhaps we were at the same concert," said Armand. "Has your friend found a man yet?" Monsieur Latour kept staring at him. Then he noticed Jojo. His face cleared. "I think I remember now," he said. "It was at a dog show somewhere." "Probably," answered Armand. "Jojo has won lots of blue ribbons at them. But the job?" "Ah, yes," said the floor walker. "I'll write down the address for you. It isn't far from here, and ask for Monsieur Bruneau." He took a small folded bag from the counter and wrote the address with a flourish. He handed it to Armand. "Just off the Rue de l'Opera," he said. Armand pocketed the bag and hurried out of the store before the floor walker's memory could improve. He crossed the street and went through the arcades of the Théâtre Français with its grimy walls and pillars. He looked at the square where sycamore trees were bare and the two fountains dry. "It will be a nice place for me to loaf on spring days," he said to Jojo. Already he could see green trees and hear the splashing of the fountains. A woman wearing a fur coat and a feather hat came parading down the Rue de l'Opera with a black poodle. The poodle wore a green plaid coat and fur-topped booties. It stopped to sniff at Jojo as if to say, "Haven't we met at some dog show?" But the woman jerked at its leash. Armand strolled down the Rue de l'Opera with such dignity that his shoes scarcely made a sound. On both sides were fashionable shops with windows made up to attract wealthy shoppers. At the very end stood the magnificent opera house with its green dome and the graceful statues on its roof. Armand pulled out the bag and looked at it. Then he returned down the next side street. It was a narrow, hidden street, and the stores on each side were much humbler than those on the Rue de l'Opera. Armand studied the number on the bag. He matched it with the one on a wooden arch over a broken gate. He turned into a shabby brick-paved courtyard. It was closed in by the blank walls of 3 tall buildings. Through the years, they had been patched with bricks of different colors. One wall was so old and crooked that it was held up by great wooden props. Directly across from the gate, the lower wall was divided into stores even dingier than those in the narrow street. And not far from the entrance, a glassed-in cubbyhole was built into the wall. 2 men came out of it now. One went into the store advertising second-hand radio parts. The other, a lean man wearing spectacles, approached Armand. "Can you tell me where I can find Monsieur Bruneau?" asked Armand, sweeping his beret from his head. "You are looking at him," answered the man with good humor. Then Armand showed him the writing on the bag and explained his mission. "I should like the job of night watchman, monsieur," he said, "if it isn't filled yet. I have eyes like a cat in the dark." The man corrected him. "It is not a night watchman we want," he said, "but a caretaker. You know, someone dependable to give the tenants their keys, distribute the mail, and put out the trash cans early in the morning." Armand blinked. This was a different kettle from the one he had been sold. The job sounded as if there was some work attached to it. Monsieur Bruno noticed his hesitation. "We really want a family man," he said. That brought Armand's mind back to the needy Calcés. "Oh, I've got a family all right, monsieur," he said. "3 children and their mother. You should see my grandchildren. They would steal your heart away." The man looked pleased. He even scratched Jojo's ears. "And a dog," he added to Armand's family. "What's your name?" "Armand Pouilly," said the other without any hesitation. "And I've never been one to fear work." "The work isn't so hard," said Monsieur Bruno, "but it ties one down. That's why the last man left." "Oh, I'm already right well tied down by my family," Armand assured him. "And the pay is low," added Monsieur Bruno, "but that's because of the living quarters that go with the job." "Living quarters?" asked Armand, perking up. "Right through the door here," said the man. He led Armand into the cubbyhole and down some steps. He opened another door. "3 rooms," he went on. "Small, of course, and the light is poor, but they're dry and there's running water in the kitchen." He snapped on a dim light, and Armand looked at each room in turn, as if he were very particular about where his family lived. The paint was peeling off the walls, and the few pieces of furniture were worn down to the bone. The kitchen stove was rusted, and the linoleum on the floors cracked and faded. But even as he looked, Armand saw the rooms change in front of his eyes. As if by magic, the walls brightened with a new coat of paint. Lace curtains appeared at the small, high windows. He walked over the floors carefully as if not to disturb the woven rugs which would replace the linoleum. The splintered tabletop disappeared under a checked cloth. Susie was sitting by it studying her books. The stove began to crackle as Madame Calcé stood over it stirring the soup. And there was Evelyn climbing the high stool to look out the window. Paul was playing with Jojo in the courtyard. "It isn't walls and furniture that make a home," Armand told Monsieur Bruno. "It's the family." Then he added, "Monsieur Latour said to tell you that he recommended me highly." "I can see by your appearance that you are sober and industrious, Pouilly," said Monsieur Bruno, "and that is enough for me. Do you think you could get moved in by tomorrow? That doesn't give you much time, but I'd like to be free for New Year's Day." "New Year's Day? Tomorrow night would be New Year's Eve. It would find the Calcés and himself beginning a new life as well." "We can move in this afternoon, monsieur," said Armand. "The children's mother has the day off today, and we don't have much fancy bric-a-brac to move." Monsieur Bruno explained some of his duties. There were the keys hanging in the cubbyhole. They belonged to the rooms over the stores. Be sure the tenants didn't walk off with them. He must close and lock the gate at night and open it early in the morning. Perhaps Madame would help him with the keys and roomers. A woman was so necessary in a job like this. That is why he hadn't taken the last 2 men who applied. Oh, that would suit Madame Calcé to a hair. Now she could give up her job in the laundry and stay home to look after her children and the roomers. She would be earning her own way. That would make her happy. The 2 men shook hands. As he turned to go, Armand noticed the twisted trunk of an old wisteria vine in the corner. Come spring, a vine that big would be covering the ugly blind walls with blossoms. The courtyard would be a garden. At last, he was on his long way to where the Calcés were waiting. Jojo barked happily at his heels as if his eyes, too, had seen the way the rooms and the courtyard would look in the future. Armand walked briskly. He raised his head so that the points of his beard were thrust forward. He straightened his shoulders in the mended coat. He wasn't a hobo anymore. He was a working man of Paris. The end.